Jeremy, this is your, welcome aboard. This is your first book with Image Comics, and you and I go back a bit. And writing a title for Image has been a long time ambition for you. What is it about that publisher that you always wanted to write for, and how is it to get made in Korea with Image?
Wow. Yeah, we've known each other a while. This is really great to finally be speaking on the record about some of this stuff. Yeah, Image was one of two publishers that I was introduced to back in 2009 when I started really reading comics. So it was Vertigo and it was Image. So I never really believed I'd ever get a foot in the door at DC Comics. So Image seemed more like a realistic goal. And I liked the creator model. I liked that there were all these new stories and characters that you owned most, if not all of. So Image was definitely my goal for 12 years, and it is a hard nut to crack. So yeah, I didn't really see a lot of success. I pitched, I don't know how many books at this point. I just think it's pretty amazing that of all the books that Image reviewed, this is the one they went with because it's by far the most personal story. And that's sort of what I learned back in 2017 when I decided to weave my own personal narratives into my stories. I actually found a lot more publishing success because of it.
Well, to that point, I've always thought in a lot of your work, there is that personal element. I mean, you're wearing a Nirvana shirt. And with Insight, you had done Skip to the End, which is available in comic book stores and Comixology. No problem. Old pro at this. But, yeah, I'm wearing a Sub Pop shirt myself.
Nice.
Yeah, got this. I got this at SeaTac, but because they're indie enough where they have a outlet store in SeaTac. But anyway, yeah. There's always been that personal element. How daunting, as someone of Korean heritage that was adopted, not unlike Jesse in this story. How daunting was it to kind of weave those more personal, raw elements into the sci-fi setting? And did doing it in a sci-fi setting make it a little more palatable to have that as a buffer?
It's a great question. Honestly, there were a couple stories I've been working on in the lead up to Made in Korea that were kind of my pilot to myself, whether this was going to work. I think intuitively, most people don't want to write about their personal experiences too close to home because the thought, at least for me, was, who cares about my problems? So Virtually Yours was really the first story that I had retooled. This was a story that I developed in 2015, and it had all white characters. And then it was supposed to come out through Rosie Press, and then there were some shifts with the publisher, and then it ended up getting shelved. And in 2017, it just so happens that I came out as non-binary. And when I did that, I reevaluated all the stuff I was working on, and I realized that representation matters. And I'd been writing these white savior stories for so long because I was raised by white people. I have a predominantly white family. And I always kind of viewed myself as white, having been raised within an American culture at home. So when I retooled Virtually Yours, it opened all these doors that were never previously there. And I started to really write about my own experiences with relationships and dating and marriage and divorce. And seeing the response from that, it was clear to me that I just needed to press harder on the pedal. So Made in Korea is basically this idea that I've always had about AI narratives, that every good AI story at its core is really about adoption. I've just never seen anyone tackle it directly. So I thought, okay, this is my opportunity. And as a transracial adoptee, it was kind of perfect. So it wasn't as daunting. For me, what was challenging was writing something that people who are fans of AI stories may not have read before. So
identity has always been a big part of that too. In regards to that, and I don't know, and in regards to transracial identity, I don't know if you've been reading this, but
oh my God, I burned through the first 100 pages yesterday. I love Michelle Zauner. I love Japanese Breakfast. Huge fan.
Yeah, it's like the best. As somebody that's also like of biracial origin, biracial Korean origin. It's just it's a book that I can't recommend enough. But in regards to your book, why we're actually here, the what is it about having it? You were saying that at their core, AI stories are about adoption, but they're also about identity. Why did you want to do a dual narrative? You've got the narrative in Korea and you've got the narrative in Texas. Why do you want to do that? And how does Jesse fall right in the middle of that?
So again, this was pulling from my own personal experiences, more so from the American perspective, because even though I grew up mostly overseas, I'd say half my life was overseas in Europe and Southeast Asia. I did finish the last years of high school in Texas, which was more of a culture shock than living in any foreign country. And that's always stuck with me. And I wanted to try to tell in a more direct way what it's like with the duality, with the diaspora of being from two different places simultaneously. And for people that aren't adopted or have those experiences, it's kind of a subtle thing that you don't really recognize. So I wanted to make it very apparent, and I wanted to show these very different cultures, but I also wanted to set it a bit further into the future where the problems that these characters are facing are things that we're dealing with now. And to try to avoid as many spoilers as possible, there were conflicts that I had designed that I think are very relevant now to the characters in the story are going to be new. And I thought that was a fun way to make the story feel futuristic without, hoverboards and flying cars.
Well, to that point, in regards to the artwork, what was it about George?
They have a website which has all their work, and I looked through all of it, and there was one short story in particular, a short comic story that they had done, which was set in Japan, I think. But the aesthetic was there. And this is an artist who is from Brazil, who now lives in Spain. But they, to me, understood the aesthetic, and honestly, I thought that they probably were going to capture it better than me because I didn't know how to explain that to an artist because I've never lived there. So it was a lot of reference images, but they had been doing so much work on that story and they'd done their own research that it was pretty apparent that they were confident to tackle the stories. And watching George progress over the last, let's say, 3.5 years working together, their style has leveled up from just 2 years ago. So it's been amazing. And what people are going to read in a couple of weeks is an artist really honing their craft.
To that point, I'm always curious about the comic book craft and it being such a visual medium. As George's pages have come in, how did that inform your own storytelling and your own scripting?
Well, so we got the green light in 2018. I think we were planning to release, I think like late 2019, early 2020. And then, the world went on fire and everything got pushed. So I actually had finished writing the entire 6-issue series on Christmas Eve of 2019. That being said, working on these pages with George, they had so many good notes, and they are an exceptional storyteller in their own right. And we're giving notes like, well, this line is lacking a human element. And it was great because these are pages I honestly haven't looked at in over a year. So it was very informative to have someone, a fresh pair of eyes, look at this stuff. And I want that collaboration. I want that input. So this is 100% collaborative. What you're reading is, the brainchild of two people. And without their input, it wouldn't be as strong and wouldn't have as much impact as it does.
What made 6 issues the perfect length? Or was there ever a talk to go straight to trade as an original graphic novel?
Never talked about a graphic novel. I think I wanted to do 6 because I've never done 6 before. I've only really done 4-issue stories. And I've written plenty of 5-issue ones that haven't seen the light of day, but 6 just seemed like a nice, robust number. And yeah, so it's kind of just arbitrary.
I this is something that I've been asking a lot of people in of East Asian descent lately. But it's important and it's hard not to bring up. We're kind of at this crux where people of our origin are under a great deal of persecution. So with that said, the timing of this book, and the Good Asian over another Fellow Image title, Fellow Image in a series by Pisho Se and Tefengi. I'm sorry about the pronunciation. I'm not sorry about the artist. It's a superb book. You can read my review on cbr.com. What is it about the timing of this book that wouldn't have made it as timely coming out so shortly after it was greenlit?
I think about this a lot. I've been thinking about it for the last year and a half. I don't really believe in fate, but I do believe in manifesting destiny. And I got the green lights in mid-October of 2018. I remember I was in my office at my day job doing tech support at a middle school. I screamed. I wanted to tell somebody, there's no one there. So I just sat down and I think I had a panic attack. I don't quite remember now.
Did you have a positive panic attack?
It was like a positive panic attack, if that's a thing. And I just wanted it to come out as soon as possible. Granted, when it comes to putting a book together, it takes time, because what I can write in a month or even a couple of weeks could take an artist months to draw. So as much as I wanted it to come out as soon as possible just for that instant gratification, I kind of just started working on other things. And then when it got pushed even further because of COVID, it was strange because Parasite had come out. And I remember seeing that film and thinking, I was just blown away. And then when Bong Joon-ho wins Best Picture and Best Director, I was just like, wow, we've turned a corner. And then seeing all the people that were nominated this year, it just felt like this was when it was supposed to come out. Like, the pandemic has been horrible for all of us, but in some ways it's pushed things to the edges that needed to just sit and simmer. And I feel like this story would not have had the reception if it come out a year ago or even a year and a half ago.
Right. With that in mind, just to kind of close this out, what are you hoping that readers kind of take away when they pick up that first issue of Made in Korea? And what do you what's kind of the big thing, the big interesting hook to put this book out in the world after literal years of development?
I think I hopefully will be able to represent a voice for people like myself, or anybody that is POC, or anybody that has wished to see some iteration of themselves in a comic and they don't have to go the extra mile to imagine it because all the characters are white. But for Korean adoptees specifically, for adoptees generally, and there is a major narrative component and a conflict in the story that is very personal for me. And I hope that when people read it, they also feel some sense of catharsis that I got from writing it, and being able to live essentially vicariously through Jesse and getting to make decisions in these crucial, very stressful moments where honestly lives are at stake, and that there's someone that can basically fight back. And I wanted to make her a literal hero, and an unusual one at that, who is a 9-year-old artificial intelligent proxy child. So hopefully that's what resonates with the readers.
Right on. And again, out in comic book stores and Comixology on May 26th. Jeremy, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks so much.